So in this video, we're going to talk about the FasTest Mediate Quick Connect, which this connector primarily works with the CGA 910, 940, 950, and 870 standards in the industry.
Yeah, and we've got two basic versions of this. One is brass, shown here, and one is aluminum. They both work the exact same way. The idea with this connector is it's lever operated, and it's got pins here, and they work with the pin index safety system type post valves that you'll see here in front of you. We'll refer to a few parts of this connector throughout the video. This is the handle. These are the pins. We'll call this O-ring here. Hopefully you can see that. It's a main seal or an O-ring. This is a termination. These are weep holes so that leak detection fluid can escape out the connector. It's very simple to operate. You line up the pins with the holes in the valve. Once you're seated, you just flip the handle and now you're good to fill.
So throughout this video, we're going to talk about operation, inspection, maintenance. We're also going to cover some do's and don'ts along the way just to kind of help with the process. All the stuff that we're going to cover in this video is going to be available on our website. We also have operating instructions which come with every connector, and if you have any questions regarding anything, if we didn't answer any questions in the video, if you still have some uncertainty, you can always reach out to Fast Sales, which will also have some of that stuff linked at the very end of the video. Installation of this Mediate connector is very straightforward. It simply involves attaching your high pressure hose to the male termination on the end of this connector. You can use whatever approved thread sealant that your company approves, the safety protocol that's outlined through your company. Thread tape is obviously approved, on our end, but again, that would be something that your company would outline.
You also want to make sure that your high pressure hose is going to be long enough for the application. You don't want to be trying to stretch this to make your connection here. You want to have it long enough. And also, if your hose does not have a swivel on either end of it, you want to make sure that you have torqued down your Mediate in the correct orientation. You do not be fighting and twisting the hose to get it in the right orientation to make your connection. You want it to already be there so you can pull it in and make your connection.
When you do have it orientated correctly, the last little piece here is when you're tightening up your hose, you want to use the flats right here on the very end of the connector. These flats are actually part of the cartridge inside the connector. So you put your wrench on there and then obviously the wrench on the other end of the hose. And that's how you cinch it up. You don't want to over tighten it. And again, like I mentioned before, you can use your company's approved thread sealant for the threads. Operation of this connector is really simple, but before we jump into that, we want to inspect the connector, especially at the beginning of each shift. A few things we want to look at on the connector are the handle. Make sure the condition of the handle is in good working order. You're going to want to look at that black seal down there. Make sure that seal's in good shape, not damaged, not popped out of the cartridge there. Make sure it's seated nice and firm. Again, no damage. If the seal does have a rip, it's going to have to be replaced because that will leak. Want to talk about the pins, Jason?
Yep, we want to make sure the pins are in place, they haven't fallen out, they have not bent. We want to make sure that they're going to fit into your valve without any issues. The cartridge here, you want to make sure that it is movable. Now it does take substantial amount of force to get it to move, and that's normal. There's a spring behind it. It takes about 30 pounds of force. You want to make sure that's flexible. If it's stiff and you cannot move it, there may have been some leak detection solution that's gotten inside and solidified that will require some service. The other thing about the cartridge here is as it's used, you may see a worn away portion of the sidewall here. You want to keep an eye on that. If that wears away too much, the O-ring may be able to extrude out under pressure. So keep an eye on that as well.
Once the inspection is done, we can move right on to the operation. It's very straightforward.
All right, so you got your cylinder in your post valve, and you got your connector, and you're going to want to make sure your pins align with the pinholes. And then you slide it on. You'll hopefully feel them engaged, and I just felt them engaged there. And once you're engaged, you lift up your handle. So you push it until it stops, okay? It's important that you get the handle fully engaged. If it's only partially engaged,
That's not a good connection.
Yes, it could end up opening under pressure. And in that case, you're relying on the cartridge following under pressure for this connector to stay attached to the valve. Not ideal, so you want to make sure the handle is fully pushed in. And you can tell by the angle of it. This angle is important, so you can look down your rack and see that all your handles have the same angle. It's very important to make sure that the handle is fully engaged.
So then after that, you can proceed with your fill. Once the fill process has been completed and the lines have been vented, you can then remove the connector simply by just actuating the handle and it pops right off. Now, important to note, if there is any residual pressure line, like right here at the hose or anywhere, if the cylinder valve is still open, you still have pressure here at the connector. The way this connector is designed, the cartridge is pressed up against the valve and you cannot remove this connector if there's any residual pressure. That's a safety feature of the Mediate. It was designed that way. We want to make sure that everybody is safe, that the connector cannot come off. So make sure the whole line is vented. If you can't get this off, there's still pressure in the line. So want to make sure you close the valve and relieve the pressure in your lines before removing. And then like I said before, actuate the handle, it comes right off. Pretty simple.
With the Mediate, the main maintenance item is your main seal O-ring that I'm pointing to here. This is the O-ring that directly interfaces the valves you connect to every day and sees the majority of the wear. You can perform this maintenance online connected to the high pressure hoses, no problem. Just want to make sure everything is as clean as possible. You will need one pick that is used to remove the O-ring. We do recommend to perform this every roughly 3 months or 1,000 cycles depending on the conditions. So in the cartridge there is a small access hole that I'm pointing to here. If you're able to see that, you will use that to be able to get better access at the O-ring. So get the pick in that hole, try to dig that O-ring out. Should come out fairly easily. Discard that O-ring and grab your new O-ring. With your Mediate, you will get a pack of seals. This is a 5-pack. Feel free to use that. If you ever need more seals, here's the part number, and you can also get larger quantities. If you wanted a 100 pack, you would add the number 100 to the end of this part number and order this. So these are double bagged. These are the correct size, the correct material for your application. So please do order only FasTest replacement parts, this O-ring included. So we grabbed our new O-ring from that bag, and we're gonna simply replace it back in that O-ring groove. It will take a little bit of force. It's a tight fit inside there, so just work that O-ring back into that groove. And if you are unable to get it all the way in, you may need to use a tool of some sort. In this case, the other end of my pick seems to work fairly well. Otherwise, you could also just attach it to a valve like you're performing a fill, and that usually you'll get the O-ring fully back in. This O-ring is fully seated and ready to fill. Go ahead and replace these on all of your Mediates on the line, and you are good to go. If your Mediate handle becomes damaged, you may need to replace it, and that replacement is very simple. First thing to do is take note of the orientation of the handle. Notice how I've got the Mediate sitting so I can read the upright text, and the Mediate handle itself is pointed down. So we'll want to keep that orientation in mind as we replace this handle. There are 2 ways you could install this handle. One is down, and the other one is reversed and flipped up. So you want to make sure you get that correct for your application. To remove the handle, we've got a split ring, and if you had to do more than a few of these, a split ring pliers would be very nice to have, but I will show you how to do it with by hand. You just get it started up over the pin there and work it around, and then remove that, set it aside, and use it for later. Do not over bend that, otherwise you may need to get a replacement ring as well. So again, keep that orientation in mind. do remove the pin. It will come up fairly easily, and this plunger right here is spring loaded, so that can stay put. Make sure it doesn't fall out. One other thing to note is you can perform this maintenance on the fill rack without removing these from the line. Not a problem. Obviously, just make sure everything's vented and there's no pressure in the system. Then you take your old handle, set it off to the side, grab your new handle, and remember the orientation. Let's take a quick look. Yes, it's still pointing down. And in inverse order, we will insert the pin all the way through. It might take a little wiggling to get it in there, but we got it in there. It's gonna work just fine. So we'll just reinstall the pin here. Just work it all the way back until it's fully installed. And now you've got a Mediate with a new handle. Another maintenance item on the Mediates is the cartridge. So this cartridge runs from your connection to your hose through the body up to where you connect to your valve. This is all one sub-assembly cartridge that you may need to replace every now and then. We do recommend it to be replaced every 5 years or 30,000 cycles, depending on condition. What you want to look for to see if these need to be replaced is the condition of the cartridge right in this area next to the O-ring. This can get worn away as the valves come in and go out and are potentially dragged across this brass surface here. If enough of it wears away, the O-rings can start popping out during the fill process. So it'll become apparent when they're needing replacement. So you're first going to want to take this to a vise and secure your Mediate and use a 1-inch open-ended wrench to grab the flats on this side of the cartridge. So now that we've done that and got it loose, we can just remove it and unthread it here. And once you've got that, the whole thing should just come right out. You want to make sure all the parts are out, and that the spring did not stick up in there. But now you can just take this old cartridge, discard it, and replace with the new assembly. Now this new assembly would have a part number of GC870041. And that may vary depending on your exact Mediate that you're replacing, so please do consult FasTest. But this goes out the same way it came in. You will want to put a drop of blue Loctite, which is, I think, blue Loctite, and go ahead and insert it into the body and go ahead and get it started by hand, and then back into the vise you go and tighten it up to 25 to 30 foot-pounds, and then this is complete. This would have to be completed off of line. You'd have to remove this from the hose, obviously, and take this into somewhere where you got a vise.
Well, that about summarizes the Mediate connector. You wanna touch on some of the tips and the do's and don'ts from some of the stuff throughout the video?
Yeah. As a review, let's install these with a hose of the proper length, and also orient properly the hose if you have a hose without a swivel. Do not rigidly mount this connector. Do tighten properly with an approved tape or sealant. Do not over tighten. Do check for wear and the condition of the connector before use. Do not use if damaged or worn. Do exercise caution while the connector is under pressure. Do not hit, bump, or otherwise affect the connector while it's under pressure. Do make sure your handle is actuated fully and properly. Do not partially actuate the handle and attempt to fill. Do perform proper preventative maintenance. Do not use seals or parts that do not come from FasTest.
All right. Like we mentioned earlier on in the video, the complete Mediate instructions are available on our website. They cover everything in great detail. We at FasTest value your business and want to support you as much as possible. Any questions that didn't get answered in the video here, please contact Fast Sales. They're happy to assist. They're always available anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.